And we're live. Still only a handful of people that have joined. I suppose I'll wait to start until I've seen that there are actually some more people online. Just to be clear, this is a seminar which will be held in English. I'm doing two seminars, one today and one tomorrow. And the one tomorrow will be in Swedish, and the one today is in English. And this is due to both the fact that we have non-Swedish speaking clients and people that are interested in Cloud9, and also, of course, that we've expanded to Finland and that we like to sort of communicate in a way that everyone can understand. So I hope everyone can hear me okay. If not, please write that in the chat. If you have any questions during this session or anything pops up in your mind, please write the questions in the chat and I will respond directly afterwards. I reckon this will take about half an hour, and I think I'll just get started fairly soon. So the first step is to share my screen, which I will do now. Okay, and I hope everyone can see my screen and that everything sounds okay and that you can hear me as well. This is going to be quite difficult because 2020 was a difficult year, and that means that any trends for this year are going to be both sort of fairly safe guesses and also some possibly slightly wild ones. I think we can all agree that 2020 was a year that will not be one of the top years in history. There were a lot of quite bad things going on, and I think it all affected us in some way. But as a theme for this little trend analysis, I've chosen to use a word, an acronym, and that is hybrid. Because I think we are in a kind of a world now which has become more of a hybrid than it has before. And all of us have probably been subjected to the office-home hybrid. The fact that a lot of us have had to work from home, some of us from March, and have perhaps been to the office a handful of times since then. We also have the hybrids between ordinary retail and e-commerce, which have just sort of accelerated during this lockdown period. We have school and Zoom, which have been sort of competing for our kids' attention. We have phones that are becoming more and more like computers. We have cinema and TV streaming, which is sort of becoming kind of a hybrid as well. We have a number of things, and I've sort of chosen to use this word hybrid and to use each letter as sort of the start of a section. So anyway, let's go to H, and the first trend that I'd like to talk about here is hardware. And actually, for the first time, for quite a long time, hardware seems to be in focus. We have obviously all the hardware developments on phones, but they've been going on for quite a long time. But when it comes to another part of what shall we say, computing, something has come lately which has been quite important, and that is the launch of the Apple chipset. They've already introduced their M1 chip in a number of their computers, and it's going to be sort of rolled out in all of their computers during this year. And why is that important? Well, it's important because it sets new demands for speed and, for instance, graphical processing power from all other chip developers. And just as a sort of response to that, we've seen that Intel has now announced that they have 50 new processors coming out. They're all sort of dedicated for different kinds of computers, different kind of uses, some for gaming, some for schools, etc., etc. But there is definitely a hardware war going on within the computer world. We also have 5G, of course, which might actually take off for real. It has already become really big in countries like China, for instance, and it's probably going to make a difference. One big difference is that pages loading very slowly on your phone or your computer might soon be history, because with the kind of transfer speeds that we're looking at, big images and streaming video and so on is not going to be much of a problem, if we can believe the hype, that is. Then we have, of course, foldable phones. This is interesting for several reasons. One of them, of course, if you look at us as a web developer, it's going to demand that we actually design for new screen shapes and new screen sizes. It's been quite tough already to adapt web page design to, for instance, varying screen sizes and resolutions and retina screens and so on. Now we also have different shapes. We're going to have phones with 2 screens or square screens and so on. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge, I think. And I think that means that responsive design is going to be definitely the most common way of doing things. Also, other hardware things. We have hardware developments in cars, in homes, in the cinema. We also have a lot of hardware and interesting developments in sports. A lot of this has been due to the fact that sports have been sort of played out on arenas without an audience. So they have to think of some way of making the interaction with the audience better. And actually, it has led to some quite interesting inventions. For instance, VR streaming and so on, which is obviously a hardware development and also needs 5G data transfer speeds to really work. Augmented reality is something which has been talked about for a long time. Now it's definitely coming in a big way this year, and I think we'll see a lot of augmented reality applications in your phone. There are already quite a lot of them for fashion shopping and makeup and so on, but I think we'll be seeing them in a lot of other areas as well. H, history. It tells us that great innovation is often born out of times of great hardship. So there's a lot of this tech has been driven on and accelerated because of the lockdown and because of COVID. Health. Well, of course, health has been kind of the big subject this past year, and it doesn't seem to be going away quite yet. As some interesting health/hardware software developments are, for instance, development of new personal devices like the latest Apple Watch, which can actually measure your blood oxygen levels, not perhaps to a clinical standard, but still give you a good indication of whether you have poor oxygenation of your blood. And I think this is also something which is going to accelerate. We can see that already a remote diagnosis has become really important because of COVID. So I think this is something we're going to see more of, and more health applications like online doctor services and psychologists and so on are coming. We also have other slightly weird things like special clothes for people who are ill, sick wear by Mucinex, which is a big sort of provider of healthcare equipment, and I think we'll probably see more of these spin-offs. One thing which is a bit worrying, and this is kind of a healthcare but also social media problem, is that to get herd immunity, for COVID, we have to have quite a good uptake of the vaccine, and a lot of people have to vaccinate themselves. There is a lot of misinformation or disinformation going on. This is from the EU, where they've actually looked at Azerbaijan and seen how much disinformation is stopping actually the people's sort of attitude towards COVID-19 vaccine, which is pretty dangerous. And the British Medical Journal has just produced a research report which says that in countries where there is foreign disinformation, the vaccination rate and the sort of likelihood that you're going to get vaccinated drops quite significantly. So this is obviously going to be an issue this year. Heal, yeah. I think this is a time for healing, and I think there are lots of signs of lots of companies that seem to want to help us do that. I think it's fun to watch the Pantone color of the year. The Pantone color of the year 2021 is actually two colors. It's a marriage of a yellow and a gray, and the gray is supposed to be some sort of enduring sort of tone, while the yellow is supposed to be an uplifting color. And they say it's a marriage of color conveying a message of strength and hopefulness that is both enduring and uplifting. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of these sort of what should we say, quite sort of uplifting and sort of you know, humanistic messaging coming along in all sorts of ways. Humor is obviously very important in these dire times. We see, for instance, TikTok that have had an unprecedented success the past year, which is largely built on both sort of what should we say, lip syncing and humor. And this is, of course, really super huge. Anyone that has teenage kids knows all about this. We also have other ways of looking at the world, and I think humor really helps. I love this Lego set, which hopefully will become a reality. The next letter is Y, and I think U is a good word here, because there is a lot of focus going to be on personalization and sort of focusing on you as a consumer and you as an individual. And I think that a part of this is because it's been difficult to get at people, and I think the feeling that you're actually being seen and being sort of given good service has become really important. It's become a real differentiator if we look at e-commerce, for instance. And it's actually become more or less expected by people. And some people think that this is going to be like the buzzword for 2021, which is really empathy. I mean, that you can reach out to another person. You can show that you're empathetic to the way they feel and the way they're isolated, for instance. As it says here, as many employees are moving to a virtual work from home experience, empathy plays a role as they may feel isolated and anxious about the future. And I think that goes for a lot of us, that empathy is really appreciated. So I think when it comes to messaging and content on websites, for instance, I think an empathetic sort of approach is going to be successful. Another thing which comes with what should we say, increasing demands on data security and that sort of thing is obviously what's going to happen after even Google abandons the third-party cookie, which is going to happen next year, they said. And what does this actually mean? Well, we've been sort of using third-party cookies, which are used to track how you, for instance, move between websites in order to do retargeting and so forth. And a lot of web browsers are already blocking this, but Google has now announced that from 2022, Chrome will not allow third-party cookies. And what does this actually mean? Well, here we come back to the U again. That it's going to be really, really important to take care of data and the kind of data that you collect from your customers. We talk about the sort of the buying funnel, and that in every step of this buying funnel you should collect data and have it in a platform, really, which is a customer data platform, and that's become another sort of three-letter word now, CDP, which is becoming really hot stuff. Since it's going to be more difficult to sort of use third-party tracking systems and so forth, you're going to rely more on having your first-party data and own data that you get, for instance, when you interact with your customers. It's going to be really important this year and moving forward. Another thing when it comes to you is obviously personal development. We see a surge in online learning. Everything from sort of celebrity teachers like the ones that are on Masterclass, which has gone very strongly last year, and Coursera that more cater to the university crowd, have had a huge surge last year. And also we can see that personal development and broadcasting and that sort of thing goes together more now. We have BBC, for instance, that have sort of supported schools in broadcasting classes, and I think they have that for a lot of different levels of education. Youth, yeah, another nice why. I think that once again we'll be seeing that people like Greta Thunberg are going to really make a difference in the world. And I think that once we can focus on something else than the unmentionable President of the United States, we will be able to move forward and hopefully be able to use the energy that these young people have to make the world a better place. B, yeah. The obvious B here is business to business, because business to business is something which has changed quite a lot. During COVID, 90% of businesses have transitioned to a virtual sales model, and this is obviously quite necessary. I mean, if you can't sort of visit your clients and your in-sales team can't visit clients, then it's going to be quite difficult. So you have to do something. You have to have web sales, you have to have video conferencing, and so on and so forth. So this has actually been an absolute necessity. And I think it has changed a lot of the way we work. I mean, we're a business-to-business company, and we've had to change our we can see, I mean, this seminar I would normally be doing physically, but now I can actually reach people that are in geographically unattainable places for me, which is great. A few interesting developments there is, for instance, platforms for real virtual conferences, like Hopin, for instance, that have had some really big conferences on a purely digital platform. And you can actually interact with other people and both see sort of different webinars and seminars and chat, like this platform that I'm on now, but more of an interaction platform, and you can present your company and so on and so forth. Right now is one of the biggest physical trade shows, which is CES, which normally is held in Las Vegas at this time of the year. Now it is actually completely virtual. Which is pretty weird. I mean, considering that everything they're presenting is sort of hardware and things you really would like to see and touch and sort of experience firsthand. And I think it's really strange when it comes to this kind of trade shows, but they've tried to make the most of the situation. If you're not satisfied with sort of ordinary platforms, you can look at something more like a classical sort of virtual environment. We have an architectural conference where they actually used VR to make it sort of more immersive and more interesting, where everyone who was at the conference became like a little avatar that sort of moved around between different rooms, and you could sort of interact with them. trying to sort of make something more physical out of a virtual event. But actually, if you try to sort of look more sort of in a more collected way at this, I think what McKinsey say is very true, that a lot of these trends were on the way, but I mean the pandemic and lockdown has really accelerated them a lot. Tech-enabled selling, e-commerce, all that stuff has been growing at quite a steady pace, but now during 2020 it's just accelerated beyond all conventional numbers and become sort of the norm. So I think it's not so unexpected, but it's still quite a big shift. Yeah, some funny little things here. For instance, that if you're in a virtual environment selling all the time, you have to think about what you're wearing, and obviously the focus is on the shirt. So there's somebody has invented coined the phrase the Zoom shirt, which is a bit funny, which is funny for everyone unless you're actually working at Facebook, because Facebook seems to be a place where you should hide your logo wear. It's obviously due to the fact that they booted Trump off their platform, and that has sort of led to threats. Yeah, reuse. Yes, I've been talking about this before in previous sort of trend seminars, and I think it is a very strong trend. And if you look at retail in general and sort of what's been happening, then actually online secondhand shopping is something which has really accelerated quite a lot. And I think that we've only seen the beginning of this, actually. I think it comes from people being more socially and environmentally conscious. They've also perhaps had less money to spend on clothes, and obviously less chances of actually going to a physical environment, even when it comes to secondhand clothing and vintage shops and so on. And we can see that in Sweden, for instance, there are clear trends here. We have like Sellpy that have even have sort of influencers that are selling their old clothes, which is quite interesting. We have traditional sort of thrift shops like Erikshjälpen have now moved online as well, with quite successful ventures, actually. Responsible, yes. Well, I've touched on this, but I think being responsible and having a brand image which shows that you are responsible and that you care about the earth and the environment and so on, and perhaps also about politics, has become quite important. I like this from Patagonia. The assholes that they're talking about here for voting out are actually not they're actually the politicians in America that are sort of against that are sort of climate deniers and against environmental protections and so forth, because Patagonia has been really on the sort of edge of trying to promote responsible production of clothing and so forth. Actually, this is a trend also. We can see that in a lot of regions, consumers actually prefer to buy from responsible actors, people that have firms that have a reputation for environmental responsibility. This is fairly global. It seems to be biggest in China, actually, and Australia. Sweden is also pretty high on that list. Reach is another R. I think when it comes to actually reaching out to your customers, it has become increasingly difficult. And I think if you look at also, this is kind of a sort of meta trend, actually, that the internet and e-commerce is becoming more and more either sort of direct-to-consumer sales or sort of marketplace sales. And when it comes to that latter category, I found it quite interesting that we have, for instance, Orleans that have developed from being a pure sort of online store for what they sell in their shop to actually selling sort of third-party from third-party sort of retailers, just like Amazon, and we have CDON do the same thing. And then we have even later things that Orleans are doing is that they have actually they're offering space for completely different e-tailers to share their front page, which is rather interesting. Well, intelligent, we have obviously a lot of artificial intelligence going on. One of the big breakthroughs was when DeepMind managed to simulate how proteins were folded and showed that they not only can play chess with artificial intelligence, but also solve real world problems or real research problems that have been impossible to do until now, really. And but we also see some other weird things that are associated with machine learning and deep fake technology, for instance. This is an experiment where they just managed to take any sort of road sign and just change the words on it. And this is technology which I think will be quite freely available soon. Another application of this is that you can actually deep fake, for instance, how you have fashion apparel which is on models that don't actually exist. So I think this is probably going to have implications for content and for e-commerce product descriptions, etc. Influencers, another important influencer marketing is increasing, even though social media marketing in general is not increasing at such a great pace. This is, of course, the US, but I think we see the same trends everywhere, that influencer marketing is actually quite important. And I think this is also a sort of COVID effect, that you want sort of friends, even if they are virtual, and influencer marketing is an important channel. We have some actors here in this space, which is like Bambuser, which have a platform for live streaming e-commerce, which is also a huge trend. It's part of the same thing. If you can't sort of go to a retail store, then you need some kind of a shopping experience, and watching a live stream and shopping at the same time what the person is demonstrating or showing is one way of doing it. Instagram, of course, are experimenting with this, and this is part of a pilot program where you're going to have live streaming shopping as well on Instagram, since there is already live shopping there. We come to our last letter, and that is D. And I've already touched on this as well, but direct-to-consumer is a huge trend. We have a lot of companies that have direct-to-consumer as their sort of main channel, and a lot of hybrids. We have a lot of companies that are increasing their spend when it comes to direct-to-consumer, because it actually is better. You have better margins. You get more first, what should we say, sort of first-person data as well, of course, if you interact directly with your customer. And that is also increasingly important in this new hybrid world. Why have I got The Guardian on here? Well, I think it's interesting that the digital edition of The Guardian has now become a huge success, actually. And I mean, that is also a way of directly interacting with your consumer, even when it comes to the media and paid media. We can see this in many ways, but one of them is watching a huge company like Nike that have actually increased their direct-to-consumer sales worldwide by some 3% during last year, and are poised to increase even more. And just to end up the whole thing, another D, which is Dawn. And I think we are hopefully looking at a year which will be much more positive and much more fun, and hopefully with some social interaction. Well, that's all for today. And thank you for listening. I'll just leave this screen and see whether anything has come up. No, nothing in the chat. So, well, I will say thank you and goodbye for now.